Wait, before you scroll past this one, a signal that stayed positive for 4 straight months just flipped negative overnight, and that almost never happens without a real reason behind it. Welcome back to XRP Future Finance, the channel that breaks down what's actually moving Ripple and XRP so you're not left guessing while everyone else is reacting late. Today we're digging into something that caught a lot of traders off guard. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which price levels to watch if this trend keeps going. Here's what happened. CryptoQuant's on-chain data shows the XRP Whale Flow 30-day moving average has dropped into negative territory for the first time since February. That's roughly 4 months of whales quietly adding to their bags, and now, seemingly out of nowhere, that pattern has reversed. When a metric holds one direction for that long and then flips, it's rarely random noise. Something in whale behavior has genuinely shifted, and the timing lines up with a lot of other warning signs we're about to walk through, so stick around because the full picture is more interesting than the headline alone. Let's put this in context first. XRP actually saw upgrades to its own ledger recently, with the network voting in favor of the XRP Ledger 3, 2.0 amendment, and 26 nodes already running it. Normally, that kind of technical progress gives a coin a little lift, or at least keeps sentiment steady. But whales didn't react that way this time. Instead of buying into good news, they kept trimming positions in the background. That mismatch between solid fundamentals and cooling whale interest is worth sitting with for a second, because it tells you price action right now might have less to do with the tech and more to do with money simply rotating out. If you track this stuff closely, you probably noticed this didn't start yesterday. XRP peaked in mid-May, and that exact moment lined up with whales ramping up their selling. Daily whale activity had been running between 9 and 13 million XRP a day earlier in the year. By early May, that number had already fallen to around 4 million a day, a drop of more than half. So the slowdown was building for weeks before this indicator officially crossed into negative territory, which honestly makes the flip less of a surprise and more of a confirmation that something had been changing under the surface for a while. And then Tuesday happened. Whale flow collapsed further, down to just 1.24 million XRP, a fraction of what we were seeing back in the spring. That kind of drop doesn't happen because of one bad headline. It usually reflects a broader shift in confidence, especially with the wider crypto market wobbling at the same time. When conditions get shaky, big holders tend to pull back first and figure things out later, and that's exactly the behavior showing up in this data. Now, there's a smaller detail worth mentioning, mostly because people will ask about it in the comments if we skip it. Some wallets linked to Ripple's executive chairman Chris Larsen became active again during this same window. Whenever a name that size moves on-chain, people assume it's significant. In this case, though, the amounts involved were relatively small, not nearly enough to explain the broader distribution trend across the whale cohort. Worth watching, sure, but it's not the main story here. So let's move to the derivatives side, because this is where the picture gets sharper. Funding rates for XRP perpetual contracts on Binance have dropped to their lowest point in more than 3 months, sitting around negative 0.0139. In plain terms, short sellers are now paying long holders to keep their positions open, which tells you bearish bets currently have the upper hand in the futures market. Funding rates had bounced between positive and negative for months, generally leaning positive whenever bullish momentum picked up. That balance has clearly tipped the other way now, and it's happening at the same time whale accumulation is drying up, which is not a coincidence you want to ignore. Here's the part that actually matters for anyone holding right now. Extremely negative funding rates aren't purely bad news. They can also set up a short squeeze, where too many traders betting against the price get caught off guard by a sudden bounce and are forced to buy back in fast, which can send price higher in a hurry. So while the current setup looks bearish on paper, it's also the kind of environment where sharp reversals tend to happen. That's not a prediction, it's just how these markets have behaved historically when funding gets this stretched. Price-wise, XRP dipped to a 24-hour low of $1.02, which rattled a few people watching their charts. It's since recovered to around $1.04, touching a high of $1.05. That's a modest bounce, but trading volume has stayed thin over the past several days. Low volume during a recovery usually means fewer traders are actually committing to the move, which makes it harder to trust as a real trend reversal versus just a temporary breather before more selling. If price does keep sliding, analyst Ali Martinez has flagged some levels worth bookmarking. Using UTXO realized price distribution data, he pointed to $0.90 as a likely support zone, with $0.80, $0.62, and $0.51 sitting below that as the next lines of defense. These aren't random guesses. They're based on where large clusters of XRP originally changed hands, meaning a lot of holders have real cost basis memory tied to those price points. If we do see a deeper pullback, don't be shocked if price reacts noticeably around one of these levels. There's more pressure showing up in futures open interest too, which fell nearly 2% to $2.28 billion. That decline tracks closely with dropping odds that the Clarity Act actually passes, and regulatory uncertainty tends to make traders close positions rather than open new ones. Breaking it down further, open interest fell just over 0.5% on the CME and dropped more than 2.3% on Binance. When you see open interest shrinking across both a regulated exchange and a major offshore one at the same time, it usually means traders across the board are stepping back rather than picking a side. The ETF numbers round out this picture, and they're a mixed bag rather than a clean story either way. Spot XRP ETFs saw $2.83 million in net outflows on Tuesday, with the Bitwise XRP ETF alone losing $5.82 million to redemptions. But Canary's XRPC fund actually pulled in $2.99 million in fresh inflows during that same stretch. So it's not universal pessimism from institutions. It's more like some funds are seeing exits while others are still finding buyers, which tells you conviction is split rather than one directional right now. Now here's something worth sitting with for a second. Every one of these signals on its own, negative whale flow, low funding rates, ETF outflows, falling open interest, could be explained away individually. But when 4 or 5 indicators start pointing the same direction within the same week, that's usually when traders start paying closer attention, because coincidences at that scale are rare. It doesn't guarantee a bigger drop is coming, but it does mean the setup deserves more caution than the price chart alone would suggest. If you're holding XRP right now, the smart move isn't panic, it's paying attention to specific numbers instead of vibes. Watch whether that $0.90 level holds if we get another leg down, and keep an eye on whether whale flow stabilizes or keeps sinking over the next few days, since that will likely tell us more than any single headline will. Markets like this can flip quickly, especially with funding rates already stretched this negative, so don't assume the current mood locks in the next move. Before you go, drop a comment telling us where you think XRP lands by next week, above $1, or testing that 90-cent zone Martinez mentioned. It genuinely helps to see what the community's thinking, and we read through these. If this breakdown gave you something useful, subscribe so you catch the follow-up the moment whale flow data updates again, because this is exactly the kind of story that can shift fast. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.